episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by the Mama Nurture Prenatal Yoga School. Visit mamanurture.ca to learn more about teaching prenatal, fertility, postnatal, and baby and me yoga. Welcome to episode 109 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. No matter what anyone says, your business is about you. It is a reflection of your unique personality and voice. So my question to you is, does your branding and website copy reflect who you are as a yoga teacher? Maybe, maybe not. In this episode today, I talk with Eman Zabi, a copywriter and brand strategist who works with business owners to help them showcase themselves in their brand and their copy to target their ideal client and convert them into sales. If you're feeling like your website reads like a robot wrote it, or if your branding and copy just don't stand out among the hundreds of other yoga business owners out there, you are going to love this episode. If you are brand new here, welcome. My name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of three, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant working for yoga teachers. And this podcast here was created for you so that you can connect to information and inspiration every single week and feel supported as you navigate the jungles of yoga entrepreneurship. I get it. I remember what it was like to leave my very first 200-hour yoga teacher training and then feel like I needed to be back into another training, and then to leave that and again feel like I was just sort of dropped out on my own. So if you are feeling that way, you are definitely not alone. Also, come on over and find us at the Facebook group. To do that, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look for the join button right on our homepage. Also on our website, have you checked out our show notes yet? This one, including all of the links for today, is at theconnectedyogateacher.com/109. And the amazing thing about our show notes on our website is that we have clickable timestamps. So if you think, well, I want to go back to that point, or, oh, I want to skip forward, use those timestamps there. Before we meet Eman, let's hear our hot tip of the week from Allison at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Allison, the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Using Schedulicity's automated email marketing option is like having a personal assistant who never calls in sick to work. You can save so much time by setting up an automatic thank you message, birthday greetings, time to book reminders, and re-engagement discounts for people you haven't seen in a while. This, along with Schedulicity's standard booking confirmations and appointment reminders, helps you make sure that your clients always know what's happening. Ultimately, this means that you have more time for things that you love and less time spent on repetitive computer work.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity, for making everything booking, payments, schedule, and email marketing so much simpler. We know that every business needs powerful, converting copy that resonates with your clients. If your message doesn't strike a chord with your ideal client, that ideal yoga student, they are not going to buy from you or sign up for a class with you. But a lot of us still have generic, boring copy, and that just doesn't stand out or showcase who we really are as this unique yoga teacher or a unique yoga business owner. Eman is the founder of Scribesmith, and she helps business owners put the personality back in their business. She has a background in political science and econometrics and a certificate in neuromarketing, the brain science behind why people buy. Eman works with clients from the outdoor, fitness, and wellness industry. Her focus in her work is making businesses sound human, and it's true. When you think about it, haven't you come across a website that has no indication of who is behind it? And I bet it didn't make you feel inspired to buy from them or even connect with them. Particularly in the yoga industry, the human aspect is so important because a lot of times our students work with us because they like us and our style and our personality. And for that to happen, our branding and our copy has to reflect who we are and showcase the human behind the scene. Eman is all about writing personality-driven copy. And in this interview, she shares some tips and strategies for you to update your copy to reflect who you are. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Eman. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me, where did you get started with this journey of getting into copy and specifically for, I want to say, wellness businesses? Is that the work that you do? And how did you get there?
So I kind of fell headfirst into copywriting. It's a fun story. It started because of a podcast. So I was a fresh graduate. I was trying to find ways to I lived in Qatar at the time and the economy was terrible. There were no jobs to be found. So I was looking into alternative ways of making some money, and I'm a decent writer. So I found this podcast, and then I binge listened to 60 episodes within 2 weeks. And the next thing I know, I have my business set up and I'm like running a copywriting business. And then
I want to know what podcast it was.
It was the Copywriter Club. So
okay.
Yeah. They're incredible. And like, if there's any, like, if you want to be a copywriter, there's no better thing to be listening to. So like, it was amazing. It was like a crash course in copywriting. And that's how I got started.
That's amazing. Do you still listen to that podcast?
Oh yeah. Like, I'm friends with the hosts now. I got to be on the podcast. Like, it was a full circle.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So you dove in, and did you niche down then? Or were you just like, I'm a copywriter for all people, or what made you choose?
So I first niched down into the outdoor industry. Love the outdoors. I climbed Kilimanjaro, and I just felt like leveraging that story would have made sense for my business at the time. And I'm passionate about the outdoors anyway, so it just made sense. And then from the outdoor industry, I transitioned more into the wellness space because that was more, that space kind of reflected my everyday life more because like, I'm a martial artist. I do work out a lot, and then like a lot, yoga was part of my life as well, and then Pilates and all of that. So it just made sense to be writing about a space that was such a big part of my life. And I started partnering with some agencies that do a lot of work who do the other side of things, like who set up ads and who set up like, who say do the graphic design and stuff like that for some bigger yoga studios. And I really got a feel for the work, and it just spiraled from there.
That's amazing. Was there any point along the way, and I just have to ask this, where you felt like there's no money in yoga or say martial arts or things like this, and then thought, I'm in the wrong business? Because I've heard some people say when they work with yoga teachers, oh, I'm going to pivot and coach other entrepreneurs because these people are struggling or they don't see their business as professionals. Was there ever that struggle?
I would think there was a little bit of that with the martial arts space, simply because it's a very traditional space, and they are very married to the idea of having like it's almost like a one-track story. Like they never want to bring more of the personal story to it. It's always about, oh, my lineage from grandmaster blah, and it doesn't try and kind of connect with the audience as much. Like it doesn't try and speak to the pain points of the people they're targeting. But that's not what I found with yoga. And I live in Vancouver, and it's a place where there's a yoga studio. There are 3 yoga studios in every block, literally. So right. The yoga studios here particularly, I found that they really have to find really unique ways of telling their story if they need to stand out. And yoga studios who started investing in their branding and then their story, they started seeing a better ROI. And then I think the kind of just that set the trend over here that like businesses, yoga businesses and studio owners in Vancouver started understanding the benefit of these things. And then obviously then you can charge more for it as well.
Right. And I'm just going to back up a moment so you can define ROI for our listeners who maybe don't know what that is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Return on investment.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this brand and this kind of setting yourself apart can be difficult. And I see it in the yoga world as well. Like I see people saying, well, it's all yoga, or I teach yoga just like it is yoga, and I don't want to niche down, or I don't want to set myself apart. So same thing. I can definitely see that in the martial arts. So what kind of propelled you, or what benefits have you seen when people do that besides the return on investment? So when you're saying return on investment, just to clarify, you're saying like if a yoga teacher says, here's who I am, this is my unique brand,
So in terms of return on investment, I think if a yoga studio invests in their branding and in their story in a sense that it helps them differentiate themselves from everyone else in the market, they start seeing the return on the money they invest. They start seeing people who start choosing them. They build brand loyalty. They attract their tribe. I know it's a cliche to say this in this industry, but like it's a real thing. Like it's a cliche for a reason because it really does happen. And like quick econ lesson. So like there's my background was in econometrics and international politics. So I do like kind of take a tangent into econ sometimes. So there's a concept called perfect competition, and it occurs when you have very similar businesses that are providing very similar products or services, and then they start competing on price. And that's the worst position you want to be in, because if your products are almost identical and you're competing for the lowest price, so that's probably like a worst case scenario for most business owners, unless you're Amazon, in which case it works for you, but that's a different thing. But as a yoga studio owner, if you invest in your branding and in your story, you're using that to differentiate yourself. So even if you're just teaching yoga, but if you bring your story, maybe you have I worked with this yoga studio owner who had this incredible story about having a daughter with major neurological issues, and how she helped her daughter cope with those issues with yoga, and how that's the real story behind why she started her studio to help other people suffering from similar issues. That's a powerful story. And you don't need to have that big of a story, like that's something that dramatic in your life to have something that connects with people, but just bringing a part of yourself to the table and using that to connect with others. It's one of the easiest and most effective ways of standing out, because bottom line is we like to work with people we like, and you can't like people you don't know.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love that saying. We like to work with people we like, and we can't know people. What? Say the last part.
Wait. Okay, wait, hang on. I need to do that again. We like to work with with people we like, and we can't like people we don't know.
That's exactly how you said it the first time. It was just me tripping you up. Okay. So this gets into a really good question then that I have, or I feel like it's a question that you can decide if it's a good question. We always hear the term brand.
Yeah.
What does brand actually mean for a yoga teacher or a yoga studio?
Okay. So a lot of people think your brand is your logo and the colors and all of that, but that's not really it. Your brand is how you show up in the world, how your studio shows up in the world. It's the whole vibe that you're trying to put across. So it's the voice you use, it's the messaging, it's the way your studio feels. And yes, the colors and the logo are a small part of it, but it basically is the overall tone of your studio, and it's something that you can use to distinguish yourselves from others on the market, basically.
Right.
I don't know if that was a little vague, but
no, that's helpful.
Okay.
And so an example of this is the copy that we use, or the wording that we use, say on our website or in our emails or on our social media posts. So can you give us some tips on, here is how to kind of connect with your brand? Like, this is something that I see over and over again. I feel like it's almost like yoga teachers don't know how amazing their story is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see this in specifically in the yoga industry a lot, where they kind of use shorthand to tell their story, and their story, it's just, there's a tendency to expect the audience to fill in the blanks. So it's like, when I was 18, I went to India and I had this really incredible experience there. And then I came back and I wanted to bring yoga and start my own studio. Like that's great. But like that story could belong to anybody. It belong to any 18-year-old who went to India to find themselves, but that's not your story specifically. Like, talk about why you went to India, why you were there, what part of that experience affected you personally, and what did you take away from it that other people might not have, and craft that into a story. And and then use, like, the key is to find your why. Like, why are you a yoga studio owner? It's not the easiest job in the world. It really isn't the easiest job in the world. And connect that with your story, and connect that with why your audience would want to work with you. So it's really about finding your audience's motivation. Like, are you, like in the case of the studio owner who had a daughter with the neurological issues. She was targeting people who had similar issues. So her audience was parents of children with similar issues. So their pain point was that they wanted to help their kids get better. They wanted to see progress in their conditions. So speak to those conditions. If you're the yoga studio owner who's like branding yourself as like if your biggest offer is like weight loss or, I think weight loss is a really common example because it's everywhere, but there's nothing to distinguish your weight loss program from someone else's, right? If you're just yoga for weight loss,
right?
Like there's no story there,
right? Or like yoga for relaxation.
Yeah, there you go. Like I feel like yoga for relaxation is like chai tea, the same thing,
right?
Like as a brown person, I'm like non-bread and chai tea annoy me on like a spiritual molecular level.
So how can we start to dig in if we are thinking, okay, well, I want to show more of my personality as a yoga teacher on my website or in my social media posts or in my email? Like how can we do that?
So another buzzword is authenticity, and it's a buzzword because it's true. Like authenticity is super important. Simply, like you don't have to be the polished, perfect yoga teacher who is always doing yoga on the beach in Costa Rica or wherever else you are. You can be the yoga teacher who binge eats donuts on the weekends and is honest about that. So like just bring yourself to the table, bring your own struggles to the table, talk about how yoga has impacted your personal life. I mean, this is all more appropriate for social media, obviously, but on your homepage, so I like to think of your website as a collection of sales pages. On every page of your website, you're selling something. And on your about page, you're selling your story and you're selling yourself. So you really want to get people sold on who you are as a person, your vibe, and don't be afraid to like bring all of yourself to the table simply because like if people don't like you, they're not going to enjoy working with you anyway. So you might as well weed those people out right at the beginning.
Okay. Let's think of an example of this. Well, I can easily think of an example. So if I teach a gentle yoga class right away, people who are looking for a vigorous, hot class are like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're saying get in there a little bit further. So how much is too much to share though? Like how much of our personality should we keep to ourselves? Like our political views, do we add that in, or is there a general rule?
It really depends on the people you want to attract. If you don't want to work with anybody who's a Trump supporter or who is a Democrat, it's your business. You're allowed to say that, but you need to understand that you're probably like, you might be upsetting a lot of people. But it is your business at the end of the day. So like, that's a judgment call that you have to make for your own business. I would think I've seen people who are, who have made that clear on their websites, and it's worked for some people, it's backfired for other people, but it comes down, like how much you share comes down to who your audience is, and it comes down to knowing your audience. And the only way to know your audience is to have those honest conversations with them, and getting to know who they are outside of your yoga studio is always a plus. And just kind of sitting down and asking them, okay, this is something that really helps. And I tell a lot of yoga studios owners to do this right in the beginning. Is like, go to your best clients, go to your returning clients and ask them what they like about you as a person, what they like about you as your studio, and incorporate those elements into your brand, because those are the things that are working to attract your kind of people. So that's the way to do it. If your yoga studio owners love the fact that you are a proud feminist and you go on these women's marches, that's amazing. Maybe include like our values section on your website where you talk about that.
What if we are a yoga teacher and we are looking at what to call our business? Some people are choosing to pick their own name. Some people are choosing maybe like a spiritual name or a business name that connects with their values or what they offer. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Okay, so I think the answer to that question is it's connected to branding, but it also is like, it's more connected to kind of where you want to go with the business. If you're thinking like real big picture, you want to franchise your studio, you want one of your studios in every state or something like that, then in that case, it might be smarter to go with like a business name, simply because like then the brand is bigger than yourself. So even if you decide at some point to sell, then it's an easier studio to sell eventually, and then you're going to have like a better return on it. But if you want to keep it small, if it wants to be like a boutique yoga studio, you really want to have a personal connection with it, and you plan on being really present and involved and want to be part of the brand, in that case, a personal name makes sense. The answer is less about branding and more about the strategic direction you want to take your studio in.
Connected yoga teachers, I'm popping in here to tell you that when Eman and I did this interview, we actually did it live, and we had people show up and ask questions. One of the yoga teachers there with a great question was Pili Bailey, who has a degree in chemistry and who is also a yoga therapist and aromatherapist. And I knew this because I've worked with Pili before. What was interesting is that when Pili posted her question, which was all about how to share her story while weaving together yoga and aromatherapy, she left out the part about having a degree in chemistry, and I thought that was really important. So I filled that in, and here is how Eman answered her.
That's a great story right off the bat, because a lot of the criticism revolving aromatherapy is like, oh, it's pseudoscience, right? Which is bullshit. But your background in chemistry is such a great selling point, because you can kind of bring the science aspect of it and immediately give yourself credibility and talk about that. One of the easiest ways to get credibility is to cite other sources and things like that. But as a chemist, you can just sprinkle in those like a few science words into your story to immediately make yourself seem more credible, and then transition from like your back, why you, instead of going into I don't know what chemists do, research or something like that, why you chose to go into yoga and aromatherapy and what that transition meant for you and why you left a potentially very lucrative career to do this. There's a great story there.
Oh, yeah.
You need to dig it out. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Let's start to look at the copy side of things here. I have seen your website and it's amazing. It's just fun, playful. Like that's the vibe I get right away from it. How was it to create that homepage? Because I feel like sometimes that's the most difficult thing, especially if you're a copywriter and you're like, this has to be really good because I have to show people I know what I'm doing. Tell us what helped you along the way to develop that homepage.
Okay, this is probably not the answer you're looking for, but it just flowed out of me. It was there. I thought of like the creepy crawly critter joke, and then the rest of it just came out. So it's not probably the answer you were looking for, but for a homepage generally, if I'm working for a client, I would basically get on a call with them for like 45 minutes to an hour and get them to just talk to me about their life, their stories, whatever they interest them. And then I send it to Rev, get it transcribed.
Jumping in here again, connected yoga teachers, just to clarify, Eman talked about how she sends that audio to Rev. This is a transcription service. I will make sure to link to that in the show notes. It's also really easy to record yourself and to have Google Docs transcribe as you speak. So to do that, you just open a new Google Doc, click on Tools, and look for voice typing. You may want to use this with the next thing that Eman talks about.
And then I just pick the language they use on a regular basis to talk about their stories and then weave that into their homepage. So with your homepage, you want to always remember one thing. Like you have to have one call to action, which is the one action you want your audience to take after coming onto that page. So for me, I want them to click through to my Work With Me page. But in your case, it may be like in a studio owner's case, it may be that they want to book a consult call or like come in for a tour or whatever it is. So the whole flow of the homepage should be designed to direct them towards that one action. So really making it fun and engaging and making it sound human by pulling like that voice of like pulling your own voice if you're doing this yourself. And like if you're not a writer, one of the easiest ways to capture your own voice is to record yourself speaking and then transcribe it, and then just look at the language you naturally use to describe things, and then weave that in and just edit that down and create like your copy. And then obviously like tune it so that it has strategic direction. But that's one of the easiest way to kind of capture your natural voice. Because when I look at my own homepage and my about page, it's still me. It's still very much me, but I'd say it's a more articulate version of me because I don't sound like that in real life. I fumble way too much to sound like my homepage. But yeah. So your homepage and your about page and the rest of your website, it's just a slightly more put together, polished version of the way you naturally speak.
Okay. So that's what you do. You take what they say to you when you're asking all of these questions, you get it transcribed, and then you start to use their own words. I really like that.
I mean, I think it's the best way to kind of, I don't think anybody can tell a story as well as the person themselves. And like the job of the copywriter is just to add that strategic direction into a story that you already have.
Okay. And so then we're also looking at the call to action on the homepage, and we want that to be like the main call to action for, say, our yoga business.
I would recommend having no more than 2 for your whole website.
Wow.
So like, not in terms of buttons, like you want plenty of buttons, but in terms of like, you have to think about what's the one thing I want people to do when they come onto my website. So think of your website as the top of your funnel. Do you want me to like break down what a funnel is real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So your funnel is, think of it's literally a funnel. The bottom of the funnel is your highest paying yoga offering or whatever it is. The top of your funnel will be like the first step that people need to take to kind of go down that funnel. So your website call to action needs to lead people into that first step. So is your first step booking a free tour or a free class or like a 50% off pass, or maybe you have an opt-in or like a download of some kind or something like that. Your first thing is like for everybody who can get in. And then as you go down the funnel, you start charging more for things. And then it kind of culminates in that most expensive offer, if that makes sense.
It does make total sense.
So
I'm impressed though, and a little bit intimidated when you say 2 call to actions for my whole website.
It's just, so like your audience, your website and like everything you have online is, just think of it as like a roadmap to your final, like your end stage of your funnel. So you just want to make sure you're guiding people into the funnel at that point. So like if the first step is attending one of those free classes, then your call to actions have to revolve around getting them to that free class. You can't have one call to action for a free class, one for a tour, one for your yoga before bed opt-in. And like the more you have at that point, you're complicating it. And yes, you can, if you're a larger business who has like multiple lead pages and landing pages and like a newsletter and different subscription stuff at that scale, it makes sense. But if you're a small studio, you really should be having 1 or 2 tops.
Right. Well, this speaks volumes because also sometimes when I go to a yoga website, I'm just like, what is this person offering? And I see like so many things on that website. So this is good bit of homework. So what would you say to the yoga teacher who's just like, well, I like to do all kinds of things and teach all styles of yoga and or they're not even like niching down takes some time. So if they're not there to niching down, they're sort of saying yes to all of the classes and teaching all variations of yoga. What would you tell them?
So I think it comes down to the difference between being a generalist and a specialist. Like you're not going to go to a GP and have them do your open heart surgery, right? Like, and so you go to a GP for something really small and you don't pay them that much for it. Well, I don't know if you pay them for it, but they don't get paid that much for it. But like a surgeon is a specialist. You go to them because they know exactly what they're doing. They're like the top of the game. And then they get paid a lot more for it. So like as a yoga studio owner who specializes in one very specific style or niches for a very specific audience, like yoga for women over 50 with injuries. There you go. I've seen a lot of those in Vancouver and they are packed and they charge, my mom goes to one and it's like $800 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a membership.
It's a membership and it's recurring revenue at premium prices because you specialize.
That's amazing. Yeah. I really like this clarification on, would you like to be a generally known or a specialist? And I think that every yoga teacher has it in them to be a specialist. Some of them can't always see it right off the hop, but when they start getting into the story of usually what brought them to yoga, how it changed their life, how it impacted them, why they then decided to become a yoga teacher, that's usually where that juice of the story is.
Absolutely. And if you're in the early stages, it can seem very frightening to like niche down and like plant your flag, but you don't have to think of it as like something that's set in stone. You could always try one style for 3 months and then see what the response is like. And if it isn't great, then you can keep pivoting. Like as a business owner, you have the luxury of being able to pivot your business when you feel like it isn't working. And a lot of the times people think like you're kind of set in stone with what you do, but I think the ability to adapt and be agile with your business is what you need to be able to survive these days.
Right. How do we own our story and share who we are without feeling embarrassed or without feeling like we're just trying to say, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing?
Okay, so it's always going to feel awkward. I'm sorry. Like I wish I had a great story for you, but it's always going to feel awkward. But the way to kind of get around it is by sounding like yourself. So it's not about like standing up and saying, look at how amazing I am and look how great my studio is. It's about saying, look how much work I put into this. I'm so excited about how far we've come. Like there's a difference between being excited about your progress and showing off. So I think it's about it's just about being real. And I think this is something that like the marketing industry especially struggles with. Like you see so many marketers leaning on a Ferrari talking about how they hit 7 figures and like no one really likes them, but nobody likes them. So you don't want to be that person. You want to be the person who is talking about the knee injury. Like if you're a yoga student, the knee injury you had in high school and how that's affecting your practice and how you're working through it. And using a personal story as a launching point towards something to do with your business. It's not about a me thing. It's about using your life experiences to tell a story that might benefit other people. And another thing that generally helps me, and this is something I do in my own business as well, it's to attach value to every sale that goes beyond just money. So for me, for every client that I work with, I adopt an animal. It helps me feel a little bit better about selling, because selling can feel uncomfortable and it feels sleazy sometimes. But if you come across it, you think of it in the way that with every person that I work with, I'm helping an animal or I'm helping another person, it's easier. And I think yoga business owners and yoga studio owners, yoga teachers, they are naturally very service-driven people. And like for them, it's just, if I put myself out there, I'm able to reach more people. And if I'm able to reach more people, I'm able to help more people. Like yoga is so transformative in its ability to help people deal with so many different things in their lives, from like physical issues and like injuries to mental health issues and all of that. So like the impact you have isn't just limited to that one person that you're working with. It just extends into their circles as well. So I think as yoga teachers, I think you're the last people on earth who should feel bad about selling, because the impact is tremendous.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you have put your impact to be like immediate in that you adopt an animal. Like, let's just clarify here. Do you adopt an animal and they come home with you, or you just adopt one?
No. No. So I adopt an animal from the World Wildlife Fund for every client. So like I send them their adoption certificate and they get like a little booklet about like the impact the donation is making, and they get to name the animal, and it's fun. It's just good fun. Yeah.
That is a lot of fun. And I can see how that really alleviates that selling thing. Because you're like, if I sell this, then I'm able to help out an animal. Yeah. That's really cool. Okay. That's really neat. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, because we got chatting before the call about an email marketing campaign that you saw really make an impact with a yoga studio. Do you want to tell us about that?
So a lot of the work I do is through Lise Keeker, and she works with a lot of yoga studio owners. So I write most of their copy. So it's great because I get to test out my copy with like hundreds and thousands of studios at once. And it's really interesting to see like the results that come out. So we introduced an onboarding sequence, which is which is the set of emails that your like the client or that your student would receive once they register with you. So like the first email, what to expect before your first class, and then like a follow-up to check in how they're doing in a week, and then like and then it launches into an upsell of like premium memberships, and then throughout like challenges and things to invite people in and referrals and all of that. And the response is incredible. There have been there are studios which have gone from making $5,000 a month to $5,000 a week. And it's just, so email marketing, I think, is the most underutilized tool in the fitness industry, I think, because a lot of people are still selling and sending out those like really cliche flyer type emails with like the giant header and like the footer with all the weird ad spammy things in them, and they're terrible. Like, as a yoga studio owner, you have to make that connection with the person you're emailing. So like, dear Shannon, I'm so excited that congratulations on completing your first week at studio, whatever. And then go in to talk about a few things that are coming up and send it out on a regular basis and just create that connection with your audience. So they're used to hearing from you. And the more used to seeing you in their inbox they are, the more likely they are going to buy from you.
I want to just chat about the email for a second and bring this in. Someone just told me, like, I love getting your emails. It's just like getting an email from a friend. So I literally sit down on Monday morning when the podcast goes out and I'm just like, what do I want to tell my yoga teacher friends? Like, even though the list is thousands of people, I typically just try and think about one or two people and then think, what could I take a look at my list and then think, what could I share with them? Maybe it's about my personal life. Maybe it's about what was uncomfortable or weird about the podcast or fun or why I'm excited. So thank you for
that's perfect.
that in. How do you create amazing subject lines?
So the first thing you should do is make sure you have their name in it. Like, having their name in it, I think it increases open rates by like 34%, which is significant. So find the weirdest, funniest subject line you can think of and like write 10 of them, and then see if you can put your person's name, like the first name, into it. Like, the one that's been performing the best for me is nut juice.
I could see why. I'd be like, what is that? I need to open that.
Yeah. So like, have something that's really funny and weird. And well, if funny and weird isn't your brand, then find something that feels totally on brand for you and still has a hook. So have a hook. And then I think the next thing is like, it's really neglected in emails, but that little text that comes up next to the email. So most people ignore that and they just launch into the email. So use that as like a teaser space and have something really weird in there. So, or really fun, or just, it's kind of like clickbait, but really without the sleaze, because like, you have to follow through with a really great email. So if you are using like a really attractive, eye-catching subject line with a little teaser, you need to follow through with a great email as well. So spend the time to write a really fun email. And then if you're doing like a sales sequence or something like that, where you really want to get people in, there's a really neat formula that I like to use for writing your subject lines and then writing your the rest of your email that I can tell you about real quick. So for the email, I like to think of it as PASS: problem, aggravate, solution. So
problem, aggravate,
and then solution.
Solution.
So take the biggest problem that your audience is facing right now, and then turn it up to an 11, and then present your solution. And that always works. It works incredibly well because it just makes makes the mouse into a giant rat demon and then hands you the sword you need to like vanquish your monsters, basically. And your offer is the solution right there. So like, that works really well. And then find a way to like once you've written your email, take a line from that part where you're aggravating and put it right in your subject line. So like, usually, like, because that's where you're using the most dramatic language, you have take some aspect from like from the drama you've written and then move it right up to the top in your subject line. So that usually works really well for me.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about Matt's podcast that's coming out soon on habits. So he's talking about, in the interview, we talk about building a yoga habit, which is, I think, a lot of yoga students struggle to do this. So say if we were going to first come up with the subject line, would we, like, sometimes I feel like I click on the email, I open it, and then I think, oh, you just dragged me in with that subject line.
Yeah, that's kind of like the clickbait thing, right? So like you don't want to be BuzzFeed, but
Okay.
you want to have really attractive subject lines, but you have to follow through with a great email. Like your emails are incredibly powerful tool, so it makes sense to spend some time working on that. So like if your thing was about yoga habits and you were doing a past email, you talk about you start off with how it's difficult to get to class, blah, 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 and then talk about the amount of money that they've wasted on yoga classes they haven't ever showed up for, and then compound that into a month, a year, and then over 5 years, and then how much they could have how much, this is just off the top of my head, but like just put the problem in, and then put the really dramatic problem in tangible terms for them, and then present your solution. So,
Okay.
and then when you have something that's really concrete in your email, it really is easier to write that subject line, and always write your email before your subject lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
That helps because I often get stuck on that subject line. I'm like,
There are
oh,
also loads of subject line formulas. I have a list that I made a PDF sometime. I can just share it with your group if you like. It's 101 subject lines that I've tested. So, and they all convert. So I can just send you a link to that.
that'd be amazing. That'd be great.
It's really ugly, so please don't judge me. It was before I had a designer, so.
It's all right. So Pili's asking, what if the problem, so you were talking about the problem, is feeling like they don't belong in a yoga class because they live in a bigger body and the teacher is too skinny?
Okay. So guilt and shame are two very powerful pain points. And those are things that if you again applied past, you state the problem, and then you talk about how that guilt and that shame and that feeling of discomfort it feels for them, and describe the actual feelings that they would go through in a yoga class, like looking at all the size 2 women in their tiny leggings and feeling like you don't deserve to be there, and really lean into those emotions before talking to them about why your studio is different. So
Right.
talk about how you're working to create a safe space, how this is a no judgment zone, that all sizes are welcome, that we're all on different stages of our journey. Just reassure them it's just talk to your audience the way you talk to a friend who comes to you with a concern. So if a friend comes to you and says, look, I feel too fat to be in this class, what would you say to her?
Right. I'd be like, that's not what yoga is at all.
Yeah. This is a safe space. We're accepting. No one's judging you. Those are the kind of things you want to be talking about at that point.
Right. You don't have to wear, skinny yoga. You just have to wear clothes you can move in.
Yeah.
Okay. This is helpful. Yeah. So then we solve it. What was the middle one? You said problem?
Aggravate.
Oh, right. That's where we really dig into it and lean into it. This is good. I can think of a few examples where something has really hit me. It's been very effective marketing in that aggravate part. And I wouldn't say that I felt like someone was ever picking on me. I felt like they were addressing it and speaking to it and being authentic.
You don't want your audience to feel bullied. It's not about making them feel bullied. It's about making them feel heard and that their problem is real, and showing them that you understand how bad it can be for them. So, yeah. Okay.
And I also like how you said email them on a regular basis. I do this with the Connected Yoga Teacher and the podcast. It seems really easy to me. One, because my VA makes a template and I just have to plug the words in. And two, because I'm just excited about getting the podcast out every week. But my yoga students, someone said to me the other day, I haven't gotten an email from you for a long time. So this is good awareness as well. Yeah, what about when people unsubscribe from our email?
So unsubscribes are a pretty normal part of sending emails out. The only time I'd say you should be concerned is if you have a mass unsubscribe, like if you have 40 people hopping off your list after one email, and if you have a 100-person list and then 40 hop off after an email, then you really need to reevaluate what you're sending out. But apart from that, it's really, think about it as fine-tuning your audience into your people. So it's just weeding out the people who don't resonate with you and your message and just speaking to the ones who do connect with you. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, that's what I tell myself every time I see unsubscribes. I try to not even notify, but sometimes in my email thing, I'm like, oh, I see some unsubscribes.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Any other tips that you'd say, yoga teachers, here is how to dig into your own voice in your copy?
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned this before as well, but I just want to maybe like dig into it a little bit more. It's sitting down with your audience and finding out why they want to do yoga and finding that why, and then connecting it with why you want to teach yoga and spelling that like bridging those two whys and spelling that out explicitly on your about page or your homepage, because that's where like you need to make it crystal clear. And it's not just about being clever and funny and all of that. You need to make it really clear why you are the best option for their specific need. So that's a really good way of doing it. And then applying the same transcribing tactic to interviews with your ideal client. So like identifying who your ideal client is, sitting down with them, having like a nice chat about their goals and what they want in life and what brought them to yoga. And then recording it, transcribing it, and using that language when you're writing your own copy. So, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for all of this information today. It's way beyond what I thought when we were like, let's talk about branding and copy.
I'm sorry if I rambled, because I have a tendency just like, whoop.
You did not ramble. You just gave a lot of really helpful information.
I'm glad.
So thank you for your time today.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, connected yoga teachers, how was that? What are your key takeaways? I really want to say a huge thank you again to Eman. I am certainly thinking about things differently for my own websites, my own emails, the words that I write, and the messages that I share with my audience. One of my key takeaways is this one call to action for the homepage. I feel like I don't have that on the Connected Yoga Teacher page. I'm definitely going to look at doing that. And then this other idea of no more than 2 calls to action for the entire website. This actually takes me back to the journey that I've recently shared about my own niche work. Back in episode 106, I talked about why I was feeling stuck and why I finally came to the conclusion that I need to niche down more. And I wonder if this is another part of that. If I can simplify things, niche down even more, it is definitely on my radar and a challenge that I'm looking at in my own business. Another key takeaway of mine is I love how Eman talked about just simply talking and using those words, polishing that a little bit, and that being our copy. It's really simple to actually do this using Google Docs, where you can talk and it will transcribe your words, most of them. So that's one tool. Or as Eman talked about, rev.com as well. And the link for that is in our show notes. Eman challenged us by asking, do we have an onboarding email sequence? So this is one piece of homework that I'd love to leave with you. Either look at your email sequence when people are introduced to your email. How do you nurture that and create this relationship with those people? And the last key takeaway, which is really this nugget of wisdom that Eman shared about how she takes each and every sale and then attaches this other value. So each and every sale that Eman makes, she then donates to the World Wildlife Fund. And I think this is an amazing way, especially if you're a yoga teacher who is feeling like the sale is in some way slimy. Now, please know that in order to stay in business and in order to keep serving your community, you need to generate profit. And if it feels difficult, you might decide to add some value for your customers that also makes it feel like you're giving back to your community at the same time. Who is ready to meet up in person? I am coming out of hibernation very soon. Friday, March 29th, I will be at the Toronto Yoga Show, and we are having a gathering that is sponsored by Schedulicity. I am so excited for this. To find out more, go to our website, theconnectedyogateacher.com, and look under trainings and events. Also, I am sharing prenatal yoga teacher training in both Bermuda and Meaford. You can also find that on theconnectedyogateacher.com, again under training and events. And if you can't meet up in person, I totally get it. We can work together online in a few different ways. So look for the Work with Shannon on the connectedyogateacher.com for more about that. A shout out to a couple of our podcast listeners. String Like Steph from Canada said, Shannon, this episode was like a bunch of light bulb moments for me. I'm currently in yoga teacher training with an absolute intention to begin teaching this spring. This episode has helped me organize my thoughts and then get it all onto paper. Cheers to your success in 2019. Thank you for such great content, Stephanie. Stephanie, thank you so much for this. My guess is that you were listening to episode 95, creating your CEO plan, and we're getting a lot of feedback for that episode. People are saying that it is really helping. I'm so glad to hear that. Renee, thank you to you for leaving a review saying, I love the podcast. I really enjoy the live calls where Shannon helps someone by asking questions and getting to the root of a problem. She is kind and has so much valuable information. I attended a live Zoom call last week and got to speak with her about my website and content creation. It's nice to have a resource like this when you feel all alone as an entrepreneur. I can't recommend her podcast enough. Thank you so much, Renee. I'm actually getting ready to jump on a live Q&A call, and this was something that I just had decided to do, to reach out to some of you, to answer some questions live, to see what your questions were, and it has really taken off. So this is something I plan to do when I get home from Bermuda again. So if you are not sure what our live Q&A call is, but you want to find out more, make sure you're on our email list. Thank you so much to our team, Samantha, Suzanne, Crunch, and Cindy for making today's episode possible. And thank you, dear listener. If you are loving this content and it's helping you on your yoga journey, could you please take a moment to leave us a review in iTunes or on our Facebook page? We love to hear from you. I try and read those reviews on the podcast each and every week. Okay, connected yoga teachers, it's time to sign off. I want to know, what will you be doing this week? Maybe you're choosing to do something with your copy, but I also want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, to your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up.